Alright, so we're back once again after a little bit of an extended holiday, shall we say, and today we're going to talk about some more ships, players and observations that I've been having in World of Warships since I decided to pick it back up once again. I know I've created a few of these videos in the past and I still do kind of enjoy making them, which is more than I can say for actually playing World of Warships. Oh, and by the way, I stream every so often on twitch.tv/darkcolin. Drop a follow if you enjoy watching streams. I might play World of Warships on occasion. So, with that being said, let's get into it. Alright, so let's get started with not a player. I thought I would ease into things with a ship type that is, let's say, more than a handful to deal with, and it's none other than the T-34 PetroPavlovsk. I would put the name up on the screen, but that would require me knowing how to at least partially spell it. I would also search it, but then I would have to hope that Google doesn't keep trying to convince me that I'm trying to spell petroleum when I search it. And I also don't fancy my internet browser being filled with adverts trying to convince me to take a holiday to a random Russian city. Yeah, that one. Although, it would be quite the trip. So we're all familiar with the T-34, the Russian heavy tank that had a habit of being blown to pieces by German Tiger tanks and blowing German Panzer tanks to pieces in return. Basically, what my long ramble was trying to say is that much like the T-34, the PetroPavlovsk is a hell of a tank. So much so that when I end up dying early in the game, which happens often, and stay a little bit longer to have some eventful conversations with my teammates, I also tend to watch a lot of PetroPavlovsk 1v1s that happen to be where the Petro is generally up against a battleship of the same tier, and well, it goes generally the way of the Petro. But it isn't due to the Petro being the most OP ship in the game, although a fairly strong argument for that could be made by much better players than myself. No, it's more to do with the fact that the Petro sits really low in the water, and battleships tend not to. So when you get into those really close 1v1s, the battleship guns can't even lower their guns low enough to even hit the Petro, while the Petro itself just obliterates the battleship's HP over and over again. Ironically enough, one of the few things that actually works versus the Petro, and I say works in inverted commas, is long-range HE spam. Yeah, so maybe loading into the game with a Thunder or a Smolensk doesn't look all that bad anymore, huh? I guess Wargaming was playing the long game after all. They weren't. They really weren't. I mean, just look at submarines. It took them years to implement them, and the results speak for itself. Speak for themselves? Yeah, we'll go with that one. Moving along. So we move from an inanimate object to a animate object? That's the weirdest way I can describe an actual human being, and enter this section of the video. You're welcome. So the player I'm talking about is the Ranked Wanderer. We've all been in those games at 5 AM in the morning, coincidentally the same time I'm making this video, where the team size looks more like a ranked battle than an actual random battle 12v12, and so this player goes to sleep believing that random battles are those nice 7v7 or 6v6 games that they played the night before. And the next day, they're still playing those 7v7 games and decide to try out some new builds in random battles like the gunboat Shimakaze, the torpedo boat Kitakaze, the bow-in tanking Thunder, the showing flat broadside Kremlin. This is basically just an autobiography of how I play the game at this point. Anyways, what they don't get is, and what they're about to get very soon, is that they're in a ranked battle, and not a random battle. And this becomes fairly evident to them when their teammates very quickly start enthusiastically questioning them about their unique playstyle. I guess that's one word for it. Usually this doesn't last all that long though, because the player in question usually realizes their mistake fairly quickly and then either apologizes and then quickly leaves the game and goes back to the safe haven that is random battles, or maybe co-op battles just to be safe, if, you know, it was intense enough. Or instead says nothing at all and then quietly leaves the game and again goes back to the aforementioned co-op battles. But enough about me. Sorry, the Ranked Wanderer. Let's move along. So on a change of pace, and moving away from the Ranked Wanderer, we bump into the actual bot that doesn't appear to be a bot, but actually is a bot. And if you're confused as I am at this point, well, welcome to the club. If you haven't seen one of my previous videos where I talk about the prevalence of bots even in higher tier World of Warships, don't. I basically just explained the entire video in that last sentence. But that aside, bots in lower tiers tend to be fairly easy to recognize, usually characterized by moving in a straight line, shooting at everything not named a ship in the game, and generally doing everything they can to show that they have no idea what they're doing. And some of you might ask, what's the difference between those bots and the players at lower tiers? Well, at least the real players actually aim in the general direction of an enemy ship, even if they don't always hit them. God, I just keep describing myself. However, in higher tiers, the bots are perhaps a little bit more difficult to spot. They don't make very many of the same mistakes that their lower tier bot relatives make. They don't sail in straight lines, although some humans do, and they move in a much more erratic style of movement. But this still leads to the same outcome, however. They still make mistakes that no normal human player would make. And I know people are going to be thinking, based on the games I play, some human players basically play like bots. Well, in my experience, human players would generally realize when there's 5 enemy ships on the right hand side of the map. The ideal play is not to turn their ship 180 degrees and then sail in a zigzag straight at them like something out of Waterworld. I don't even know why I made that reference. I don't even think anyone even knows what Waterworld is anymore. But I do, and I guess that's all that matters. Where was I? Oh yes, bots. Generally, the damage done by these tier 10 bots isn't all that significant. All they really do is farm credits and account XP, so someone in a, less well-off country can make a month's income by selling the same account. At this point I have no idea where I'm going with this, so let's move along before I end up getting DMCA'd by Wargaming for promoting bots. Nah, they'd never do that. They'd never DMCA someone, would they? So, once again we bounce from the non-human to the human. The next player is the Weekend Bender. This is usually associated with alcohol, where you disappear into a bar on a Friday evening and don't return to some point on Monday morning. But when we talk about the World of Warships version of this player, it generally doesn't involve all that much alcohol. Well, usually doesn't. So what can we say about the Weekend Blender? Oh my god. So what can we say about the Weekend Bender? Or how should we characterize them? Well, for one thing, they almost exclusively play on the weekends. Wow, such an in-depth analysis right there. And it's usually because they actually have real-life commitments outside of the game that stops them playing the game more regularly, i.e. during the week. Although that doesn't stop many of the biggest, shall we say, creators in terms of content in the game shitting on them. Which, nah, I'll save that little run for another video, I think. Maybe. But as a result, the Weekend Bender tends to play quite a lot over the weekend. On the one hand, this is a very beneficial thing because it means that when I queue up to play a game, it means I don't have to wait 7 minutes to finally get into a game, only to find out it's filled with 4 CVs and I'm playing the Geary, which goes about as well as you'd expect. So in that case, the extra players that it adds to the player base are very, very, very welcome. But of course, on the other side of this metaphorical coin, there is a downside to having these players in the game, and it's mostly due to the fact that they can't play during the week. They're usually of a lower skill level. Now for me, this is basically indistinguishable from the usual games that I have in World of Warships because I generally am just not that good at the game. But for others, I can see the frustration that comes with people playing with players well below their skill level. But I have absolutely no idea how to fix it. If anything, I think it's hilarious when 2 players start arguing over something that happened in a 20-minute game of World of Warships. It really puts things into perspective, although that could say more about my personality type than the actual state of the game. But if you've watched more than one of my videos, you probably already know that by now, so let's get on to the final and perhaps most... I can't actually think of a way to describe this player, to be honest, without actually stating the name. So let's just go and get to it. And so, much like the end of a night out, we get to the last player on my list of players that I'd like to talk about. Similarities between the 3am drunk happy player and the actual 3am drunken person in a bar are, well, pretty self-evident. They have trouble seeing obstacles in front of them. Usually the drunk person at the bar will end up smashing their head off a signpost, while the drunk 3am happy player will end up smashing their head off the keyboard when they realise that the red ships far away from themselves are actually on the enemy team. Other similarities include, but are not limited to, a weirdly large sense of happiness that tends to have the polarizing effect on people. On the one hand, it can really motivate people and the happiness tends to rub off on them. On the other hand, it can really annoy people that someone is being over the top gleeful, although in fairness, if the person is annoyed at that, they are going to get annoyed regardless of what they do. You also have the habit of these players talking, let's say, more than your average sober person, and this applies to whether they're actually playing World of Warships or you're sitting at the bar as a designated driver listening to them recount the horrors of their job to you in 3 different volumes, each lasting an hour. My personal experiences aside, however, these players tend to not be a big deal and not talked about all that much because the time they play the game is the time no one else plays the game, i.e. late at night, which is coincidentally that is the time that I play the game, which is why I'm talking about them right now. Oh, funny how that works. Amazing stuff. Alright, I'm going to end the video here before I waste any more if you're already ending life. That sounded weirdly like a threat. It wasn't. Anyways, follow me on Twitch at twitch.tv/thedarkcoin and subscribe on YouTube if you want. See you all in the next one.